Hello my lovely bookish friends, and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to be doing my mid-year freakout, which is where I go through some of my best reads so far in 2024. Let me start by doing some reading stats. So far I have read 60 books this year, which is a bit of a record for me. I think it's because I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks and also reading quite a few light novel series, which are quite short and they're super easy to get through. Also, what's really cool is that my lowest rated book this year is a 3-star, which is still a really good rating, so I've not actually read a bad book this year, which is amazing. But let us get down to it. So what is the best book I've read so far in 2024? So as I said, I have read so many wonderful books this year and I found it really hard to pick a favourite. I found so much enjoyment in the books that I've read this year, and so far I've had very few disappointments, and none of the disappointments have actually been really bad. I'd still read them again. From What the River Knows to Anne of Green Gables to 7 Time Loop to The Other Bennet Sister, I've read so many that I have loved. I decided therefore to mention 2 favourites which kind of haven't shown up much in my blogs, and the first is A Crane Among Wolves by June Hur. This is a YA historical novel which follows a girl who seeks revenge for her sister who is kidnapped by a tyrant emperor. And sadly, this is based on true history in Korea. There was this emperor who kidnapped and murdered and did some very horrible stuff to hundreds of women. So it is a very dark subject, yet it's handled really well, and the main leads are actually really adorable. And it's kind of like a gritty historical K-drama, and it sounds a bit weird to say, but I really did enjoy it. Another book which was very high on my favourites list was The Witch Would Not. This is a gothic historical fantasy surrounding this house that's kind of cursed, and yeah, that's kind of all you really need to know going into it. It's written by the same author as Half a Soul, which is one of my all-time favourite books, and it's also set in the same world but years into the future of that world. So it's more like now Victorian, whereas that Half a Soul is Regency. And I just loved it. The atmosphere was so gothic and it involves dark fairies and folklore, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I read it in one sitting and I keep going back to read my favourite parts. Next up we have my favourite manga or graphic novel that I've read so far this year, and again this was another one where I had many options for this question. There was The Moth Keepers, for example, which was an absolutely beautiful graphic novel about this kind of society that lives at night in the desert, which I just thoroughly enjoyed. I also loved the Call the Name of the Night manga series, which some of you recommended. It's this cozy fantasy about a girl with powerful magic that gets out of control with her anxiety. And I also loved the manhwa, which is a Korean manga, which I've only just started, which is called Reread? I don't know how to pronounce her name. Ended up at the Duke's mansion. This is about a girl who falls into the world of a novel, but as a character who is fated to die really early in the story. So this is her trying to take back her fate, and it's lots of fun. I'm really enjoying it. The best sequel I've read so far in 2024. So I kind of was torn between 2 sets of sequels. The first was the sequels to Cinder, which is the first book of the Lunar Chronicles, and these stories are all fairy tale retellings, but in the far future where there's like this space and this alien race called the Lunars, and it's a lot of fun. And I actually only have the last book in this series to read, but I'm kind of holding it off as I don't really want to finish this series just yet, as I'm really enjoying it. And then the other kind of set of sequels that I read were the 2 sequels to A Discovery of Witches. These follow a witch called Diana and a vampire called Matthew, who are after this ancient book that is said to hold the key to the fate of creatures living in the human world. I absolutely binge read these 2 books, and they're big novels, yet I flew through them when I was ill and I absolutely loved them. I then started binging the TV show as well, and yeah, this series is just so good. I highly recommend. Best reread so far in 2024. I've actually reread quite a few novels this year, but my favourites have to be when I reread the Harry Potter series. I haven't read these books in so long, so rereading them felt super magical and really reaffirmed my love for the Wizarding World. I listened to the audiobooks as well, which were really whimsical to listen to. A new release that I haven't read yet but want to. Now I don't really keep up with new releases as I prefer to wait until like after the hype dies away. However, but I keep seeing the book The Song of the Six Reams about, and every time I see it I'm drawn to the cover. It's a novel based around Chinese mythology, I believe, but I don't really know any more than that. However, I still haven't read Magic Steeped in Poison duology, which is also by this author, which I own both both books in this series, and I haven't read that yet, so I need to read that first before I consider giving Song of the Six Reams a go. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Funny enough, this is actually the same as last year's. It's the fourth book in the Nevermore series. This originally was set to be released last year but was pushed back to this year. I absolutely adore this whimsical middle grade series and I honestly cannot wait to get back into the world of it again. The biggest disappointment. Sadly, the biggest disappointment this year was actually the Divine Rivals series. Just to be clear, like I said at the beginning, I haven't really actually read a bad book this year. I have enjoyed all the books that I've read. However, with these ones, I enjoyed them, but I didn't love them. I think they were just hyped up too much, so that they were on a level that they couldn't actually really reach. I do want to read them again, however, because I've read two other books by Rebecca Ross, and I really like her writing style. Which actually leads me on to the biggest surprise for the year, which was Dreams Lie Beneath, also by Rebecca Ross. I absolutely loved this book. It was just my cup of tea. It was about a girl who fights nightmares that come to life, and it was just such a fun read. This is definitely more my style of book, and I just adored the story, and I kind of wish this had been the duology, as it's standalone, but there was just more I wanted from these characters, and yeah, this was definitely my cup of tea, opposed to like the kind of romanticy style of Divine Rivals. Favourite new author, debut or new to you? Erin Craig is the author I chose for this. I read A House of Salt and Sorrows and absolutely fell in love with her gothic writing. This book is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses story, and it's so dark yet beautifully written. I really enjoyed it and I really want to read her other books. Newest favourite character. This is slightly an unusual one, as the character that comes to mind is Shardlake from Dissolution, the first book in the Shardlake series. This is a historical murder mystery series that follows Shardlake as he solves different cases in Tudor England. I found this story and just the character Shardlake fascinating. He is a disabled character, he has a hunchback as well as other conditions, and I found this aspect of his character really well written. I'm disabled myself, so I'm hypercritical on disabled characters, but he had such depth and cleverness, and it was just, it was great to read. I haven't read a straight up historical fiction for a while, so I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to read the rest of the series. A book that made you cry. Once again, the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series destroyed me. It's such a wholesome series about a cafe where you can travel in time, but only until the coffee gets cold. It was the story about, I think it was the two comedians it was called. Yeah, that one really just got to me. I really made me cry. Also, another book that made me cry was Anne of Green Gables. I just sobbed. Okay, I just sobbed. I have a whole reading vlog on that where you can find out why I sobbed, and yeah, that book hit me right in the feels. A book that made you happy. So many books made me happy this year, but especially like the light novel series 7 Time Loop. That was so much fun. I absolutely loved binging that. Also the sequel to My Happy Marriage, another light novel series that I adore. And also rereading my favourite manga series, Snow White and the Red Hare. These sort of books give me like that just instant boost of happiness. What books do I still need to read by the end of the year? So I don't have a TBR for this year as they kind of stress me out, but I would like to read some more books off my physical shelves. I want to priority books that I own, as well as I would like my physical TBR to kind of go down. I don't actually know for sure how many books I haven't read on my shelves, but I plan to go through and then make sure they become the priority books to read. That brings us to the end of this mid-year freakout video. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I've mentioned, and also tell me what your favourite books that you've read so far this year are in the comments. I would love to know what you guys have read, and also see if I can find out some other great new reads. Until next time, my lovely bookish friends.